Okay, everybody, we promised yesterday that we would get you a singles segment of our teaching on patterns. Yesterday, we taught about this season of being single and how we need to embrace that space, and that God will give us grace for that space. And it can be a growing season, it can be a healing season, it can be a maturing season, and just a great season when we embrace it. But we've got to know the pattern. Again, it's oneness with Jesus so that we can become one, so that we can become whole. So let's hit the 3 C's that we promised you. If you're in the dating season, if you're single again, these are just, I think, 3 things to look for and to rate while you are waiting to grow into a relationship, perhaps with your future spouse. But again, just biblical patterns, biblical principles that I think you can guide your life by. And the first thing before we get into the 3 C's, Pastor Charla, let's talk about red flags. Noticing red flags is so important. And again, that's why it's important to have other people involved in the process that know you, love you, care about you, and they're going to tell you the truth. Like, they want you to be happy. They want you to find, your mate, your spouse, the person that God has for you. But we need to pay attention to those voices. So what would you say, what is one big red flag, perhaps, that would help people who are in that season?
I think one red flag would be somebody that puts a lot of pressure on you to meet their needs, to make sure, it's all about them.
Yeah. And so to your point yesterday, remember, our deepest needs can only be met by Jesus.
Right.
And if someone is trying to get you to meet their deepest needs, you got to pay attention to that and kind of direct them to Jesus. Now, there are many other red flags. We just wanted to kind of hit that one so that you have that takeaway, that our deepest needs can only be met by Jesus. And I think you've got to figure that out as a single person. You've got to know that, like, not just preach that, not just repeat that, but really own that, live that, and experience, so that you have that authority and that conviction to know it's a fact. If you don't, I think you could short circuit the pattern and it won't give you the outcome that you're wanting.
And something we say a lot is, love gives and lust takes. So pay attention. That's just kind of a great principle to look for and to notice a pattern of. Is it always all about them? And even for ourselves, to self-evaluate. Do we always have to have things our way? Is it our way all the time? And we're focused on the other person meeting our needs. Because really love gives. It's about really meeting the needs of the other person.
And I think too, in that season of being single, you have to be you have to have a high standard. Don't be ashamed. Don't shrink back from having a high standard. We used to tell our children, don't date losers. Now, that's not a knock. It's not mean. It's just, hey, recognize the principles and the patterns of a winner. It doesn't mean that they're perfect. It just means that they have goals, that they have direction, that they have a real walk with Jesus. And there is a difference between flags and flaws. And before we jump into flags and the flaws, I've got to talk about where we're recording from, okay? Because you're wondering, where the heck are they? Well, we are actually at a pastors network where we are meeting with other pastors from around the nation, looking to some mentors and leaders. But we're in this network called Household of Faith, led by pastors David and Nicole Crank. And so we're here for 3 days, getting filled up, getting refreshed, learning and growing so that we can be better for you. Okay, that's out of the way. So now you can focus on what we're actually saying. But there's a difference between flags and flaws. We talked about one flag. What is a flaw? A flaw has to do with maybe little things that they do. A flaw, like things that might irritate you. I
don't have any flaws, by the way.
You don't have any flaws, but I do. So let's talk about what some of my flaws are. What would you say a flaw for me that maybe you just accept? What's a flaw that you go, that's just who he is?
I think just very, very, very in the car when we're driving. Very, very, his goal when we get on the road is to get somewhere as fast as humanly possible. And he thinks everyone else's goal should be that as well. So he can be a little impatient.
Their goal should be to get there as fast as possible as well. If you don't know me, I move quickly. wherever I'm at, I want to go forward. And so, yeah, that is a flaw that I'm working on. And I think, when you think about flaws, for instance, toothpaste. Do you put the toothpaste top back on, or is it a big clumpy mess every time you go and it squirts? You go to squirt it on your toothbrush and it squirts in your eye because it's mounted up and clotted up. Do you shut drawers? Do you turn off lights? All of these things that, do you clean while you cook? Because I've noticed there's people that clean while they cook. I tend to be that kind of person. And then there's people that just make a utter mess. They don't put the butter top back on, the mayonnaise is on the knife. I mean, there's sprinkles and salt and pepper and shavings and it's a little overwhelming. But again, those are flaws.
Are those my flaws? Are you giving me my flaws? Just curious.
I think sometimes, there's pancake batter on the wall and
do not do that. That is not true.
So you just have to go, it's a flaw. So a flaw is something that's a characteristic that is a little irritating. A flag is a behavioral thing. A flag you got to pay attention to. So when we think about, this idea of a high standard, I always tell the story about eagles. And if you don't know eagles, we can learn a lot from the natural. Okay, so when eagles court, the female will pick a stick. If a male approaches her, she will pick a stick, grab it, and she will fly high. She will drop that stick, and that male that's wanting to court her and become a mate for life has to catch that stick before it hits the ground. Well, then she gets a bigger stick and she flies lower to the ground, drops the stick, and then the eagle has to catch it. If he misses, he's not qualified. And literally this series goes on to where the stick gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and she gets closer and closer to the ground. What is she doing? She is setting a standard to see if this guy can roll with her. And I think we need to learn from that when you're in the dating phase, you got to set the bar high, okay? And so let's look at these 3 C's real quick, Pastor Charla. 3 C's for guys and girls. We're going to look at them. Again, we're looking at patterns. What's the first C?
The first C is they need to be a Christian.
Are they a believer? Not just a believer.
Yes.
Because sometimes people say they're Christian, and again, we don't, all due respect, but sometimes we have to look at the fruit of their life, right? Jesus said, you'll know by the fruit. The proof is in the fruit. And so know if they are really a believer, or are they a follower? Are they committed?
What are their patterns? What are the patterns?
What are the patterns of their life?
Do they have the patterns of prayer?
Right.
Like if you're a Christian, you should have a pattern of prayer. You should have a pattern of going to church and
Right.
serving at your church.
Right.
And do they have a pattern that shows the fruit of their life is really a Christian?
Yeah.
Because I hear girls say, and guys, all the time, I'm like, the first question I ask when they tell me they're dating somebody, I'm like, are they Christian? And they're like, and I'm like, no. Like you
gotta
know. You gotta know.
Yeah. So she and I went to different churches, but we were both fully committed. Like we were serving on the dream team. We were at church. We were involved. We were reading the word. We were praying. We were witnessing, sharing our faith. And again, you can't become one spiritually if you're not both committed followers of Jesus. And again, it's not just physical oneness. It's emotional and spiritual oneness, spiritual being the most important. And would you say, Pastor Charla, what do you do when you're counseling some young woman or young guy, and they say they're interested in this person, and you begin to probe a little bit, and they're not saved, and they go, well, I think I can have an influence on them, and I think I'm going to be a witness to them and see them get saved. And what would you say? What do you call that?
Yeah, that's called missionary dating, and we don't. It's much easier to pull someone down, to be pulled down, than it is for you to pull someone up. And that very well may be true. You may be a witness in their life.
Yeah.
You may be a seed sower in their life, but you're not going to do it through a dating relationship. We're not missionary dating. So,
but by all means, be a witness to them.
Yes.
And when you see them encounter Jesus, and you begin to see them talk about Jesus, and they begin to follow it, now you can begin to say, okay, let's take this to the next step. So the first C is Christian. The second C...
And do not proceed any further to the other C's if you haven't checked that box first.
Yeah, I would say that's the essential.
Yes.
You don't move past that until you know. So the second C, first C is Christian. Second C is character. Character, how they act when you're alone. How do they respond under pressure? How do they handle correction? Are they teachable? Are they touchy? Are they defensive? Are they quick to isolate and cut off? You know, are they honorable? Listen for the sound of honor. Honor has a sound. And it's important how you hear them talk about other people. How do they talk to their parents? How do they talk about leaders? How do they talk about, other people? So pay attention to their character. Are they positive, or are they always negative? Are they overly critical? Do they have vision? Do they have goals? Do they have discipline? Do they want to take care of their body and their mind and their spirit? And then can they lead themselves, right? So you want to find a person that's wanting to grow. They want to get better, and they're not going to be perfect, but they want to get better. Do they operate their finances? Are they tithing? Are they savers? Why do they budget? Like, pay attention to how their character is. And I think that's a huge, huge thing. I think with us, that's one thing I respected about you is that you were a tither. I knew that you were a tither. You gave offerings. You were very generous. You had paid off your car, and to me that just really spoke. Okay, well she's responsible, And I think for me, you might say the same thing. I didn't make a lot of money, but I wasn't a waster, and you could tell that I was a tither.
And you were a planner. Mm-hmm. You planned out things. I thought that was something that was really impressive. One of our first dates, we went on. You planned ahead, and we went to Lake Lanier, and they had you could roast marshmallows, and he had brought with him all the supplies to roast marshmallows with. That was before we knew they had them there to rent. He didn't know that. It just spoke to me that he planned out the night. He planned ahead. He thought further than just the moment. So I think that's important. Also, the way they treat other people, like the way they treat wait staff, the way they treat people that they may not see as important as them, which we are all important. All of us are important. All of us have value. So I think the way that they treat other people says a lot about somebody's character.
Yeah, and I think that you just have to pay attention to that. Do they have character? Not that they're perfect, but again, are they teachable? How do they act? When you see them corrected, how does she act when she doesn't get her way? Pay attention to that. Character is key, because what's going to happen is if they're putting their best foot forward now, it's not going to get better later, because when you get into marriage, that stuff is even magnified more. And so just pay attention to it. And again, you're not looking for perfection, but you need to follow the pattern and the path of character. So we've got Christian, character, and the third thing is, do they compliment you? Do they compliment you? In other words, do they bring out the best in you? Do they speak to the best part of you? Do they cause you to be closer with Jesus? Are they enhancing you to be your best? That's one thing that we've even seen, and we saw it in our lives, that we encouraged one another to be our best for Jesus. But it's cool, like if you think about our oldest son Micah and his fiancee Hope, it's really cool because we've seen them kind of challenge each other, and whether it's their attitude, or whether it's being generous, or whether it's planning or being on time. And it's just neat to see how they're complimenting each other. And as parents, that feels really good that, they are they're bringing out the best in each other. And I think that's important. You don't want people bringing you down, bringing the worst out of you, and I think that's an important part of the process.
Something I mentioned yesterday too is, you want to have friendships around you and have relationships around you that call you up, not just call you out. And so when it comes to challenging one another in a relationship, it's not just calling out when you have a bad attitude or when you're not doing something right. It's not just about being critical. It's about saying, you know what, I see more in you. There's more in you. You're better than this attitude, or you can do better than this. And so there's a difference between calling out and calling up, encouraging.
That's so good. So again, the 3 C's: are they a Christian, character, and the compliment. So if you're in the dating phase, rate your mate, rate your partner, rate that person on a scale of 1 to 10 in these 3 areas. We believe this will be a pattern that will help you align with the person that will cause you to be your best for God.